what they're doing? They're running us around.
Okay, for today's episode of me talking about generative AI products without talking about generative AI products, I want to talk about the problems with taking a very general purpose product that is, put out in the world, and the makers never really assert what it's for in any concrete sense. They just kind of put it out there and say, here, see what you can do with this. And then we have people coming along saying, oh, it's a tool, it's just like any other tool, it's just like a hammer. And so the problem with taking these and then getting caught up in that hype and trying them out and then finding a purpose or a way that you can use them, why doing that, finding that purpose, is the fool's errand. And I say that because what you're actually doing is you're gifting those makers of that product much more than they are giving anything back to you. It's a very imbalanced transfer of value. So what I mean by that is, you're giving them stories they can tell of, some people find it useful for this. They never actually have to say, this is what we made it for. They can just say, some people find it useful for this, and kind of hint people to try it out, and then maybe they'll find their own thing to use it for. And even though those people might be using it and actually getting some value out of it, finding it useful, finding it satisfies a purpose, they're accepting something that is adequate, not something that is, directly addressing or dedicated to that purpose. So it's never going to get better at that. Not at least not in a reliable, iterative way. It's going to get better in very broad or even just kind of like reliability kind of ways. But as far as being dedicated to that purpose that you've found for it, it's not, because it's not made by a team that is using a design process of having a very clear purpose, which is your functional, this thing that you've found it useful for. And they're not like working on improving on that and getting it better and better and better at delivering that specific purpose. And that's why the whole tool, it's just a tool argument comes into play of, hearing that, you'll say, oh, well, that's just a tool, right? But that's not how tools work. That's not what tools are. That could be a tool, but that would be a very bad tool. Because even if you take what people consider, the most simple tool ever of a hammer, they love to say it's a tool just like a hammer. Hammers, there's hundreds of different types of hammers. And they're all really good at very specific types of hammering. And for the other types, they're probably really bad, or, varying degrees of badness or not being optimized for. And that's what good tools are, and software products are very much broadening out into this general purpose land of SaaS and subscription models, and hooking you in with, kind of features that tease usefulness in certain areas of purpose, but never actually dedicated. They're not something that you can rely on to be better and better and better at your purpose that you've chosen. So yeah, that's why I think finding the purpose for products where the makers do not assert a concrete purpose, finding a purpose is the fool's errand.